Hey folks, I'm Vinny. Sweetheart is Gertrude. Had her for 10 years, 11 years. Broke down on me once, but that's all been fixed. No more computers. Got the computer out. You don't need a computer on a motorcycle.
So what year is she?
2003.
Yep. And she's a Quacker?
Yeah, Kawasaki Vulcan, 1500.
Yep. And have you made any modifications or anything to her in the time you've had her?
Yeah, I put some air horns on it because my little mit didn't work for anyone. And if you've ever known driving motorcycles in WA, you know that they change lanes as they indicate. And you go mit and they don't hear you. But you hear Gertrude now. He got air horns.
So we're in Sydney, Australia, and you're talking about a trip you were telling me recently you did across the Nullarbor.
Yeah, the Nullarbor.
So for those viewers that are not familiar with Australia, talk us through what exactly the Nullarbor is and kind of an indication what the trip is kind of involving, the distance and stuff.
Well, from Perth to Sydney, I think it's about 4,200, 4,300 kilometres. The Nullarbor is in the middle of the country, which is a huge limestone slab. And they call it Nullarbor because it's a Latin word that says null arbor, no trees. There's no bushes bigger than that. There's no water, which I forget the Aboriginal word for the Nullarbor, which basically says no water, not no trees. But it takes me, at a push, 6.5 days, and that's averaging 700 kilometres, 800 kilometres a day.
That's a good chunk every day.
Yeah.
700-800 k's.
Well, you've got 300 kilometres between gas stations.
Right.
So, sometimes you've got to carry fuel and sometimes you don't. On Gertrude here, mate, I get 350 out of a tank, so, I was all right. Only had to use fuel once, and that was at the border station because the truck driver that came in to deliver the diesel, unfortunately, put the unleaded into the diesel tank.
What?
Yeah.
I quit.
Mate, I kid you not, you should have seen them all lined up down the road. Some got 5Ks, some got 10, but they all stopped. All the diesels stopped. But then when we got to a place called Mundrabilla, which is an Aboriginal word for fuck all else around, which is another roadhouse on the western side of the border, they had no fuel because it was their fuel that went into the diesel tank. So that was the only time that we had to, use the jerry cans.
So this is a recent trip you did. So you've left Sydney and you've gone across the Nullarbor, which is kind of this, I'd say, southern central part of Australia.
Yeah.
Towards Perth, which is on the western side of our country.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the distance? You got an idea of the distance, Sydney to Perth?
4,000. I'm pretty sure it's 4,200 and something as the crow flies.
Yep. And was there a particular reason you wanted to do this road trip?
Yeah, I love riding.
Very cool. Very cool.
You go for a ride and you camp up for the night. It's a completely different ride than going for a ride for a weekend then riding home. When you don't have to ride home, it's just going that way, head into the sunset. And it's just well, for me, mate, it's a 6.5 day meditation session.
Yep.
You don't often see too many animals because, Central Australia is pretty dry.
So are you riding mostly daytime or nighttime as well?
No. Yeah, you pull up about, going west at about 2:30 in the afternoon, you've got the sun that sits right in the middle of the road. So, yeah, you kind of stop because you can't see anything. I had a kangaroo run past my front wheel, mate, before I even touched. It was gone.
Yep.
You know, I didn't see it. Gone. Yeah, gone.
For people not familiar with Australia, is that a bit of a problem, the wildlife out there on the roads?
Only driving at night.
Yep, so that's why you wouldn't ride at night.
No. You've got 7-foot kangaroos.
Yep.
Camels. Yeah. You've got some pretty big critters in Australia. You know, I've looked up at a kangaroo. No, he would have been 7 foot.
Yep.
Easy. Big red. Well, you hit one of them, you stop.
So when you're riding along out there, do you find that the noise of the bike scares them to run across the road, or scares them away, or they don't give a shit?
No, they don't hear it.
No.
They don't hear it. Unless you got them little whistlers. You know, them little kangaroo whistlers?
No, I've never heard of them. What's that?
Tiny little whistle, you'd kind of stick them on here.
Right.
I had them stuck on the side of but they just give out a whistle that's supposedly, you know, they don't like.
And you can't hear it. It's kind of like a dog whistle?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I've never heard of this. This is interesting. Cool.
Yeah, you just got little stick-on pads. Take peel a little bit of paper off and stick it.
Awesome.
And I don't know if they work or not. You know, I never saw a kangaroo when I had them.
Well, I was going to say, if you didn't hit anything,
Yeah.
it probably worked.
Yeah. I've hit a couple of birds.
Yep.
Yeah, they give you a bit of a fright. I rode through one of them bloody big grasshopper things called
Locust?
locusts. I rode through a locust swarm one day. I thought they were birds. I thought I'd run into a flock of birds. They were that big.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I pulled up and I could see bits of big grasshoppers stuck between me fins and me radiator. They were stuck in nuts and bolts. They were stuck everywhere.
So when you're out there, did you camp on this trip the whole way out, or did you stay?
Nah, usually roadhouses.
Yep.
In my 30s I used to camp, but not in my 60s. I need something soft at the end of the day.
So how many times have you done this trip?
Nullarbor.
Yeah. Is it more than once?
Yeah, 10.
Wow.
10, 15.
And how many times on
Since
GoTrip?
1990.
Since 1990.
I rode across my first trip. I left Perth. I had Christmas Day with the oldies. I left Perth Boxing Day, and I got to Sydney about 4 o'clock in the afternoon of New Year's Eve.
Wow.
And shattered. That was the first trip.
Yep.
But it's like the guy in the advert says, I enjoyed it so much I did it again and again and again. And then I did a couple of trips, you know, over the top. I went to a party from Perth. I went to a party in Queensland. That took about 8 days to get there. I had
Again, for people from overseas, that's a hell of a long way. What kind of distance you talking there? That's
to Queensland. That would have been about, I suppose, 6. It'd have to be 6,000.
so there'd be probably around 4,000 miles. Just a rough conversion for our American friends.
Yeah.
About 4,000 miles, one way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then had a few days in Hervey Bay, which is up in Queensland.
Mhm.
Then the wife got on a plane and she flew back to Perth, and I rode over the top.
So over the top. What's over the top? What do you mean by that? For people not familiar.
Through Queensland up to I forget the name of the bloody place. Camberwell. It's where they made Ned Kelly in Camberwell.
So this is heading up north into Northern Territory, up towards Darwin.
Queensland, through to the Northern Territory.
Yep.
That takes you up to Three Ways. You turn right at Three Ways. There's a nice little camping spot called Mataranka. Mataranka Springs. Stunning little spot. Too many tourists now, but they've kind of wrecked it. But stunning little spot. And then Catherine. And you chuck a left at Catherine. You go through the Kimberley region, through to Kununurra. Then down from Kununurra,
So this is all Crocodile Dundee supposed territory
Oh yeah, you don't go swimming.
for the people watching.
Yeah.
That's where it was all based, this part of Australia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then you went across to Broome.
Yeah, and then that goes across to Broome. Then you've got a day and a half ride from Broome to Port Edland. And it's 1,700 kilometres from Perth to Port Edland. So, but there's ways you start getting down into the south of the state. There's a few more towns, a lot more caravans, and twice as many cops. So you take the inland route.
Yep.
Which is not too many cops, not too many tourists, the grey nomads.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, a few days later, you ride down here to Perth.
So I'll drop in a picture that you're gonna, of your gear as your bike's packed up. Talk us through, imagine I got the picture on the screen, talk us through what you've got packed on your bike. What do you take on a trip like that for that long?
My clothes, tools of course. I had 2 milk crates sitting on the rack here. That had 2 milk crates there. I had my bag and sleeping bag, and I had things tied up here. I had my shoes hanging off. I had my guitar on the top. Can't go without a guitar. That's just, well, you just can't do that. I think one trip I had my sleeping bags and a few things on the top. But
and fuel, you carried your own fuel as an emergency?
Yeah, carried 8 litres.
8 litres?
8 litres of fuel.
How far would 8 litres get you?
Give me a couple of hundred.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, she's a 19 litre tank, and I can get about, easy riding, 350 kilometres.
Yep.
I don't know what that is in miles.
I'd take a guess at low 200s probably.
Yeah.
220, 230, something like that.
Yeah.
So any misadventures, anything go wrong when you're out there on your last trip across or
yeah.
coming back? Talk us through some of the moments.
She was playing up, like throttle, no throttle, throttle, no throttle. Oh no, and I'm thinking, oh Jesus, this is gonna hurt.
And where were you at the time of this?
Still in West Australia.
In the middle.
She started mucking around when I left.
Right.
You know, but I had no choice. There was nowhere for me to stay, and nowhere else in Perth for me to go. So yeah, I packed up Gertrude and gave her a kiss and said, "Let's go, honey." But unfortunately, the computer that somebody had put in it started mucking around. So as I'm coming up to WA border and South Australia, I'm just praying, like, please don't let me break down this side of the border. Come on, girlie, don't break down this side of the border. So if the RAC come, they'll take me back to Perth.
How far from Perth to the border, you reckon? Even in time, like a day's, 2 days ride?
2.5 you can get, if you get to the border, 2.5 days.
Right. So that's doing about 600-700 k's each day?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, across the border, and there's a roadhouse called the Nullarbor Roadhouse, which is 150 k's east of the border. So I've crawled into the Nullarbor. I filled her up. I was going to stay the night because I knew the bike she was going to stop. So I stayed the night and unpacked, went into a hotel and came out in the morning, started her up, no problem. I thought, great. So I packed her up, I pulled her out, put it into gear, stop. So I got stuck on the Nullarbor for 4 days.
4 days?
4 days.
So is that 4 days because you're trying to do repairs, or 4 days because you're trying to get assistance, or what happened?
4 days because there was no mechanic around the place, so I had to phone up, the RAC. It took them a couple of days for the payment to go through.
Just for the overseas people, what's the RAC?
Roadside assistance.
Yep.
Yeah. You break down, they come and pick you up.
Yep.
So then a truck came and picked me up from the Nullarbor, took me into Ceduna, which is where the bike stayed. The bike stayed in Ceduna. I had to fly to Adelaide, and then from there, because of my trip was planned, I had to fly from Adelaide to Sydney. I stayed the weekend in Sydney and then flew from Sydney to the Gold Coast. Spent 2 weeks up there, flew back to Sydney, and then I think it was about 2 weeks later they said, "We've got your bike." So the mechanic actually knew about motorcycles, and he took the computer out.
Do you want to give the boys a plug? Because I know who it is as well.
Motorcycle Weaponry at Mona Vale
in Sydney. Great guys.
Oh yeah, mate. They know their stuff.
Yep. So their solution to fixing the bike was
take the computer out.
Yep.
Rewired everything back to its factory settings, and away she went, mate, good as gold.
Awesome.
And haven't let me down since.
So let's have a walk through.
Yeah.
Gertrude. Let's have a look through. So just from where you're sitting for the moment, engine-wise, what have you got going on behind you there?
1500cc V-twin.
Yep.
No, normal. Gearbox. Shaft drive. So, no breaking of chains. What else?
The exhaust system, are they standard or is that
Well, they're a
aftermarket?
Vance and Hines. Vance and Hines systems, so they're not the standard ones.
Yep.
But they do make them for the Kawasaki.
That's
which
why
I
she sounds
do
so
need
cool.
some new ones coming up soon.
And what have you got going on the front there with your highway pegs and your...
Oh yes, got to have them, mate.
Yep.
Got to have them. That's me. Well, they call it a choke, but it's fuel injected, so it's just a idle advanced.
Yep.
For air horns, so everything can hear me.
Yep.
And they're a ripper.
You have to give us a sample.
Yeah,
The
no
air
worries
horns.
there.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
One more time.
One more. She's loud.
That's
heard.
That's wicked. So what else you got going on the front here?
I got the hypercharger. Probably half the problem. Another one that's not it's not exactly stock standard for them.
Yep.
And that's all pretty old.
Do you have a shield up, a windshield when you're riding?
Yeah, but it fell off. I've usually got a little one here, but it fell off and I don't have...
Did that fall off during the ride while you're actually riding?
No, it was just loose.
Just loose, okay.
So I just took it off and threw it in the bag.
Yep.
But that's here. It's just a little wind deflector. And that sits there.
Yep. That makes a difference?
Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, it's good. And
That's
plus me sleeping bag and whatnot fits in there and tape it on.
Jump on it, let's kick her over and listen to those pipes. When you're ready.
Got some throat action.
Beautiful sound.
Yeah. Oh, she's grubby and dirty, but it's a bloody good bike.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much for joining us on Custom Chopper.
No worries.
We wish you many a safe ride. Where's your next trip?
Don't know yet.
To be determined.
To be determined.
All right, matey. Sign out. All the best. Take care.
Cheers, matey.